You make six figures, 100 grand a year, maybe more, and you have $400 in your checking account. Not because you're bad with money, not because you're lazy, because the system you're playing was never designed to let you win. It was designed to keep you spending exactly as fast as you earn. And right now, you're not the exception, you're the pattern. A recent Goldman Sachs report found that a quarter of people earning over $100,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck, and that number actually gets worse the higher you climb, jumping to over 40% for people making $300,000 or more. Read that again. The people making triple your salary are struggling just as hard as you are, sometimes harder. That's not an income problem. That's an architecture problem. Here's what's actually happening to your money right now, even though you never see it happen. The moment your paycheck lands, it enters what feels like a straight line from your account to everyone else's. Rent goes up because everyone around you can technically afford the increase. Your car payment creeps in because a slightly nicer car felt like a reasonable reward for the promotion. Subscriptions stack quietly in the background, $10 here, $15 there, invisible individually, brutal in total. Economists have a name for this. They call it lifestyle inflation, and it's the single biggest reason high earners stay broke. Your income went up, your lifestyle expanded to match it exactly. Your savings rate never moved, and the scary part isn't the $400 sitting in your account, it's what $400 represents. The Federal Reserve tracks something called the emergency expense test. Basically, can the average household cover an unexpected $400 cost without going into debt? Right now, roughly 1 in 3 American households cannot. You're not failing some personal test of discipline. You're standing exactly where the Fed's own data says most people stand, high income or not. Nearly half of six-figure earners admit they've had to lean on a credit card in the last few months, not for emergencies, just to make it to the next paycheck. And that's where it gets expensive in a way most people never actually calculate. The average American is currently carrying around $6,700 in credit card debt at an average interest rate hovering around 22%. Do the math on that for a second. If you only make the minimum payment, something close to $150 a month, it takes you nearly 8 years to pay off that balance, and you end up handing the credit card company over $7,000 just in interest. That's not a rounding error, that's an entire extra year of your salary gone for the privilege of having spent money you didn't have months ago on things you probably don't even remember buying. This is the quiet tax on not having a system. Nobody sends you a bill that says cost of disorganization. It just shows up as interest month after month, invisible until you add it up. So, if the problem isn't how much you earn, the fix can't be earning more. That's the trap. People assume the next raise, the next promotion, the next job title is going to be the thing that finally gives them breathing room. It won't. Because the moment more money arrives, your current system routes it exactly the same way it routed the last raise, straight back out the door. What actually changes your position isn't more income, it's a different relationship between the money that comes in and the money that's allowed to leave. Some people build that relationship by accident, most people never build it at all. A small number of people build it on purpose, and that's the only real difference between them and you. Let's actually run the numbers on what that difference looks like, because it's bigger than most people expect. Say you automate $200 a month into an investment account the day your paycheck lands, before you see it, before you can talk yourself out of it. Historically, the stock market has returned somewhere around 7 to 10% a year on average after inflation over any long stretch of time. At even a conservative 7% average return, $200 a month over 10 years grows to somewhere around $35,000. Over 20 years, that same $200 a month turns into more than $130,000. You didn't get a raise, you didn't work a second job, you just moved the decision earlier in the timeline, and time did the rest of the labor for you. That's the entire difference between the version of you drowning in $6,000 of credit card interest and the version of you sitting on 6 figures of invested assets. Same income, completely different order of operations. Here's the shift that matters, and it's smaller than you'd think. Before your paycheck touches a single bill, a fixed percentage moves somewhere you can't casually access it. Not what's left over at the end of the month, because there's never anything left over at the end of the month. That's not an accident. That's math working exactly as your spending habits designed it to. The money has to move first, automatically, before your brain gets a vote. That single change, moving the decision before the temptation instead of after it, is the difference between someone who's still explaining their bank balance 5 years from now and someone who isn't. This is also why cutting your daily coffee or skipping vacations was never actually the answer, and honestly, it was always a bit of a distraction, trimming $10 here and there, while the real structural leaks, the car payment, the subscriptions nobody audits, the credit card interest quietly compounding in the background, keep bleeding you dry is like bailing water out of a boat with a hole in it using a teaspoon. The fix isn't found in willpower at the checkout counter. It's found upstream in the architecture of where your money goes the second it arrives, before willpower is ever required to make a decision at all. And this is exactly why 6-figure earners get caught in this trap more than almost anyone else. A higher income buys access to bigger financial mistakes. Nobody making $40,000 a year gets approved for a lease on a car that costs $70,000. Nobody making $40,000 qualifies for a mortgage on a house with a $5,000 monthly payment. But you do. Your income doesn't just give you more money, it gives you more rope, and more rope without a system just means you can climb higher before you fall. The Harris poll found that high earners are actually more likely than lower income consumers to rely on buy now, pay later financing for everyday purchases, not big emergencies, everyday purchases. That's not a lack of money. That's a lack of a system standing between the impulse and the transaction. You didn't get here because you're bad at this. You got here because nobody ever showed you that the order of operations matters more than the size of the paycheck. Nobody sat you down and explained that the goal was never to make more, it was to build a structure your future self couldn't accidentally sabotage. That's fixable, not overnight and not with one video, but the version of you sitting on real savings a year from now doesn't start with a bigger salary. It starts with deciding today that the money moves before you do.